lovely people, welcome to my channel. Thanks so much for being part of this channel. Thanks for always watching me, sharing the videos, liking and your comment. Please, if you are watching me and you have not yet subscribed, consider subscribing. Like and share this video. You might win a soul or touch a heart by just sharing this video. I'm here today to give you a summary of our Sabbath school, and we are in lesson 4, and our lesson 4 is titled To Love the Lord Your God. To love the Lord your God. Our key text is taken from Deuteronomy 6 verse 5. Deuteronomy 6 verse 5, and I read, You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. And so the whole of this week, we are going to look at when the Bible talks about we should love the Lord with all our heart, all our soul, all our strength. What does it mean? What does it mean to love God? Sunday talks about to love God, to love God. After Moses recounted to the children of Israel their history, he began giving them instructions on what they were to do in order to take the land and to thrive on it. And so Moses knows that he's not going to enter the land with them. So in order for the people to live on that land and be successful, they needed to obey some principles. Therefore, Moses at this point was telling them or repeating to them everything that God has told them. They are part of the covenant that they need to fulfill or obey. Moses was repeating it to them that this is the land you are going on. A lot of people are around you who don't believe in a God that you believe in. And so these are the things you are supposed to do in order to be successful or to thrive, so that you don't end up like the people around you. Deuteronomy 6 begins like this. Now this is the commandment, and these are the statutes and judgments which the Lord your God has commanded to teach you, that you may observe them in the land which you are crossing over to possess, that you may fear the Lord your God, to keep all his statutes and his commandments, which I command you, you and your son and your grandson, all the days of your life, and that your days may be prolonged. Amen. And that your days may be prolonged. So Moses gave them the commandments, repeated it to them for them to know that as they are going onto the land, they are not just to go and sit there and do whatever they like or just following the footsteps of the nations around them, but they have principles that they need to follow that will help them to prolong. And when we read Deuteronomy 6 verse 4 and 5, we are going to read that it says, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one. You shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your strength. And so first Moses told them, the Lord your God is one. The Lord your God is one. You shall love him with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength. Love the Lord your God with all your heart. How interesting that here, in the midst of the law, in the midst of all the warnings, rules, and provisions, the people are called to love God, and not just to love him, but to do so with all your hearts, with all your soul, and with all your strength, which points to the absolute nature of this love. And so God is giving them commandments, laws here and there to obey, and now is telling them to love. So one would be like, how can we love this person who is warning us and giving us laws here and there to restrict us? How then do we love such a person? Loving God with all the heart and soul and strength means that our love for him should be supreme over our love for everything and everyone else, because he is the foundation and ground of all our being, existence, and everything else. Love for him should put our love for everything else in proper perspective. And so God is calling us to love him. Yes, he's giving us his commandments, and he's calling us to love him, not to just love him, but to love him with all our heart, all our soul, and all our strength. Meaning that everything else should be second. He should be first. And when we put God first, we will realize that everything else is in its right position. And so when God is calling us to love and to obey him, he's looking for absolute surrender, not 50-50, not your heart. Oh, Christianity is all about the heart, and so the body can do anything, or the strength can be used for something else. No, he's looking for absolute. Surrender everything to him. That is why he gives us his law as a guidance, and also calls us to love him with everything, not 50%, not 99.9%, but 100% of us all. Also, one thing we need to recognize from this key text, or from these verses that we read from Deuteronomy 6, is that he's not talking about love our God with all our hearts, all our soul, and all our strength, but rather he's saying your. He's using the word your, singular, representing that God is talking to us individually. Yes, Israel was there as a multitude, and the message was delivered to them as multitude, but at the end of the day, it goes to the individual, and every individual was expected to make God his or her God and love him or her with his or her heart. And so in this case, your father's love towards God is not to be transferred to you. Your father is not loving God for you. He's loving God for himself. And so you too must choose for yourself. And so God is talking to us individually, that individually we need to make the decision to love him with all our hearts, all our soul, and all our strength. Monday talks about to fear God, to fear God. And so one will ask, how can you love God and at the same time fear him? And we are going to read Deuteronomy 10 verse 12. And now, Israel, what does the Lord your God require of you? But to fear the Lord your God, to walk in all his ways, and to love him, to serve the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul. Amen. And so he's saying that you should fear the Lord your God and to serve him. And so how can we love God and at the same time fear him? In one verse, they are told to fear God, in another to love him. And in this verse, they are told to both fear and love him at the same time. In the common understanding of the word fear, this might seem like a contradiction, but it's not. Instead, the fear of God in the sense of awe and respect for who he is, his authority and power and justice and righteousness, especially in contrast to our sinfulness, weakness, and complete dependence on him, should be a natural reaction. We are fallen beings who have violated God's law and who, but for his grace, deserve condemnation and eternal death. And so the fear God is talking about, or the Bible is talking about, is not that kind of fear where you are scared of approaching God, where you have to shake when you hear the name of God, where God appears as a wicked, fearful God. No, but when we come to understand who God is, his power, his authority, we need to fear him. And the fear here is respect, honoring him, giving him the honor and the respect that he deserves, not placing him second or not placing other things above him, but placing him first. And so when God is telling us to fear him, he's calling us to honor him, to respect him, and know that he's all powerful, all knowing, all present. And that is what God is calling us to do. That is when it comes to fear God. Now, when we read Ephesians 2 verses 1 to 10, it uses the phrase children of wrath, which explains that because of our sins, we're fallen, and God needed to destroy us with his wrath, anger, and all that. But through Jesus Christ, he manifested love towards us and allowed Jesus to die on our behalf and forgave us and made us new. And so knowing that God has anger and he can destroy us with his anger, but he chose not to exercise that anger, but rather replace it with love, shows that we need to fear him and also to respect him, which is the meaning of the fear God is talking about. He said, despite the fact that we were children of wrath, which is why we should fear him, Christ died for us and thus gave us a new life in him, which includes freedom from the sin and condemnation of the past, which is why we should love him. And so when we come to understand that we're fallen beings and God needed to extend his wrath on us, but he favored us, we will fear him, we will respect him, we will honor him, and in turn we will love him because he allowed his only begotten son to come and die on our behalf. And so when we understand this principle, we understand why God was calling Israel to fear him. Because Israel was once in Egypt. They were slaves, condemned, rejected. And God said, I'm going to redeem you. He redeemed them with his power, with his might, and brought them out of slavery. And so all that they can do after witnessing all that God had portrayed before them is for them to what? To respect him, that is to fear him, and also to love him. Remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and the Lord your God brought you out from there. No wonder then that they both loved and feared God at the same time. And if they were to do that, how much more should we, having the great truth of Jesus dying on the cross for us? And so if Israel respected and feared God, loved God because of all that, then we too, knowing that Christ died on the cross for us, is enough for us to what? Honor him, respect him, and love him. Tuesday talks about he first loved us. He first loved us. Even amid rules and regulations in Deuteronomy and all the admonitions warning the Jewish nation that the people must obey his commandments, his judgments, and his statutes, they were first and foremost to love God with all their heart and soul and might. Of course, they had good reasons to do just that. They had good reasons, and the good reason is that God first loved them. God first showed love before he called humanity to love back. And so when we read Deuteronomy 4:37, Deuteronomy 7:7, 8 and 13, Deuteronomy 10:15, Deuteronomy 23:5, and Deuteronomy 33:3, we will see that God is the one who first loved them. We are going to read few of these verses. Deuteronomy 4:37, and because he loved your fathers, therefore he chose their descendants after them, and he brought you out of Egypt with his presence, with his mighty power. Amen. And so because he loved their fathers, he delivered the Israelites from slavery, from Egypt, and brought them into his presence. And so we learn here that God first loved us. Again and again in Deuteronomy, Moses told the people about God's love for their fathers and for them. But more than just in words, the Lord revealed this love by his actions. That is, even despite their shortcomings, their failures, their sins, God's love for them remained steadfast. A love that was powerfully manifested in his dealing with them. Amen. And so God didn't just use his mouth to say, oh, I love you people, I love your fathers, and the same love I have for you people. No, he portrayed it. After saying it, he showed it for them to know that he loved them. That's why the Bible says that for God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son. And so when God loves, he shows it, he gives, he does something to prove that yes, he loves. It's the same way we also cannot say we love God, and our actions, our attitude, our thoughts will not prove that we love God. It doesn't make sense, even for a man to tell a woman that I love you, and he will not do something physical to show that he loves the woman. Doesn't make sense. It is not acceptable at all. We love him because he first loved us. That is 1 John 4:19. God's love for us predated our existence, in that the plan of salvation was in place way before the foundation of the world. And so God did not sit down and wait for man to fall before he will come and think about what to do, plan B and all that. No, but God, out of love, planned everything in case man choose not to follow his footsteps and fall. He will quickly redeem man. This is love. He did not sit there and wait for things to mess up before doing something. How fortunate we all are that God is indeed a God of love, a love so great that he went to the cross for us, a self-sacrificing love in which he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. Thus, we today have a revelation of God's love for us that the children of Israel probably couldn't even have imagined. And so, yes, we have Christ's cross, the cross, as an example of God's love for us. Okay, so when we come to Wednesday, it talks about, if you love me, keep my commandments. If you love me, keep my commandments. And this is simple. As we learned in Tuesday, God showed his love by giving his son. And so it's the same way, if we also say we love God, we need to show it. And the only way we can show our love towards God is by what? Keeping his commandment. And so when we read Deuteronomy 5:10, Deuteronomy 7:9, Deuteronomy 10:12-13, Deuteronomy 11:1, and Deuteronomy 19:9, all these verses, we see that before God will call man to obey, he first called man to what? To love. And so when you love, you will keep his commandment. So we are going to read few of these verses. Deuteronomy 5:10 reads, by showing mercy to thousands, to those who love me and keep my commandments. So love came before what? Keeping my commandments followed. And Deuteronomy 7:9 also reads, therefore know that the Lord your God, he is God, the faithful God, who keeps covenant and mercy for 1,000 generations with those who love him and keep his commandments. Those who love him and keep his commandments. And so here too we see that love comes before keeping the commandments, which explains that when we love, it is so easy for us to do the bidding of the person that we love. It doesn't become a burden. It doesn't become something that is so tangling. It doesn't become difficult for us. We are able to obey, submit when we love the person. That is why God is always calling us to love him before we keep his commandment, because you cannot keep his commandments if you don't love him. And in fact, if you keep his commandments, which is not out of love towards God, then it's being legalistic, and that is nothing. It will yield no effect at all. That is salvation by works, and that one too doesn't work at all. Love to God must always be expressed by obedience to God. That has always been the case, and it always will be. And this obedience to God means obedience to his law, the 10 commandments, which includes the 4th commandment, the Sabbath as well. Keeping the 4th commandment is no more legalism than is keeping any of the other 9. Exactly. So love to God and obedience are together. You cannot separate the two. You can't say, I love God with all my heart, but as for obedience, I can choose to obey him in this, and I can choose to do whatever I like. No, it doesn't work like that. It's either you are loving him and obeying him 100% with all your heart, all your soul, and all your strength, or you are not loving him at all. That is it. When Moses again and again told Israel to love and obey God, he did it after they had been redeemed from Egypt. That is, their love and obedience was a response to the redemption that God had given them. They had been redeemed by the Lord. Now they would respond by faithfully obeying his commandments. Is it any different today? Not at all. And so God does not ask us to love him and obey him while we are still under the control of Satan. No, when God redeems us, when he saves us, that is when he calls us to love and obey him. Because when you are still in sin, when you are under the control of the enemy, you cannot love God and you cannot obey him. Satan will not allow you. And so whenever God saves us, he asks us to love him back. And so it also explains that if you are not saved, you cannot obey God. Do you get it? And so the moment we go down on our knees and pray that God forgive me of my sins, all the sins that I've committed, instantly God forgives. And then he redeems us from that sin, which means that from that point, we need to go on, or we need to start loving God and obeying him. That is the point. And so God does not ask for love and obedience while we are under the control of the enemy or while we are in sin. But the moment he forgives us and we accept his forgiveness, he calls us to love and obey him for our own good, so that the devil will not get power over us again. Thursday talks about the first commandment. The first commandment. Old Testament forms the background, the context, the basis for the New. Old Testament reveals the goodness and love of God. This is one reason why the New Testament, including Jesus, again and again quotes the Old Testament. Exactly. And so some people believe that, as for the Old Testament, it's no longer necessary. We don't need it. We are in the New Testament era, so we need to focus on the New Testament. The Old Testament is not. No. Old Testament, New Testament, they are both together. You cannot separate them. The Old Testament is the foundation of the New Testament, and the New Testament is the fulfillment or tops up to the what? To the Old Testament. You cannot separate. That is why Jesus Christ and his disciples on earth, they always quoted the Old Testament, referred us back to the writings of the prophets, showing how necessary the Old Testament is in our lives. Now, in Mark 12:28-30, we are going to read something there. Then one of the scribes came, and having heard them reasoning together, perceiving that he had answered them, were asked him, which is the first commandment of all? Jesus answered him, the first of all the commandments is, Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God, the Lord is one, and you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. This is the first commandment. Amen. When the scribe approached Jesus Christ to ask him about the commandments, Jesus replied that you should love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, referring to the Old Testament, the writings of the prophets. Deuteronomy says, which tells us that the Old Testament and the New Testament are together. You cannot put one aside and focus on only one. No. What could be more present truth than this command? In the very last days, when final events unfold and everyone will be called to choose one side or the other in a very dramatic way, the commandment of God will play a crucial role. Exactly. So the commandment of God will always play a crucial role in our Christian life. We cannot put it aside and claim to love God. No, it doesn't work like that. Ultimately, the side we choose, even in the face of persecution, will be based on whether or not we truly love God. That's the deciding issue. And we can come to love God with all our hearts and soul and might only as we come to know him for ourselves and experience for ourselves his goodness, love and grace. If need be, that's something to die for. Exactly. That is something to die for. And so when even we are being persecuted, whatever decision we make will be based on either we love God or we do not love God. And so this week, the lesson has been about we loving God with all our hearts, all our soul, and all our strength. Thanks so much for being part of today's summary. If you have not yet subscribed, please consider subscribing, like and share this video. You might touch a heart there by just sharing this video. Bye-bye.